Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have from the Great Midwest, RDV, with me tonight. We're going over the poll winner that you, the listener, the viewer, the extremist, if you will, voted on. And that happened to be a collection of female-centric martial arts movies. And the winner is 2021's Baby Assassins, starring two people. I know nothing about it. Have no idea if they're K-pop, if that's Korean. I think this is Japanese. I will say this, RDV. Never saw it. I think the second one just came out. I've seen bits and pieces of information about it. The way I initially would describe this film is that it's not an action film. No. It's a juvenile female drama that's got some action, and that kind of threw me for a loop because early on in it, there was a couple fight scenes, and they're assassins and they're teenagers. And it's kind of like, how do they get along? And then there's like maybe some comedy stuff with it too. So that threw me for a loop. What did you think?
Well, the best way to describe it, it's the odd couple, but they're both assassins. They're both in high school. Both girls, complete opposites. One's basically sociopath. She doesn't like. She's very shy. Doesn't like going out talking to people. Would rather stay at home and just she's okay with doing the main job, killing people. But to describe this as an action, there is some at the end, like the last 20 minutes.
Yep.
And then 20 minutes into this, there is some more. There's some action, but not too much. But this is a quirky comedy. With the assassins being their main job,
Right.
It's not an action-packed movie like we just reviewed with Don Lee, the Roundup, it's not like that. But you can tell what it's going for. It's basically if the Disney Channel if they actually had the balls to do this, we never would though, make a story about two kids, high school kids, that their main job is basically being assassins for hire. And they end up basically killing someone who's connected to the yakuza, and there's some quirky response to that, the revenge, and then at the end they just basically take out the yakuza, at least the branch. But that's the short gist of it. But I want to point out that every movie that we put in the poll this week actually is available over on Tubi. So you just dropped the link for it, the movie there.
Correct.
This, like I said, I want to point out the girl in the blonde was I didn't read up anything about this when I was watching it. So I was going into it blind. I'm like, is that a boy or girl? Because of her short hair. And then she's kind of like, she acts a little bit like a boy, like a little tomboyish.
I'm going to totally agree with you here. That's not a complaint. It's just an observation.
So once I figured out it was a girl, and like, okay, this makes a little more sense because I'm watching this with subtitles and I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on. But I want to point out, I was reading up about her. That is Saori Izawa. I'm probably butchering it. She actually is a Japanese stunt woman. So she's done other stuff, just stunt fighting stuff. So she really gets to shine here. There's a cool fight scene at the end where she gets to do her moves. She also does it in the beginning here in the grocery store. I thought it was actually a pretty decent movie. It was a little slower paced, only because I was expecting like an action movie. But it was more like I said, a quirky, not a rom-com because there's no romance in this.
Right.
But it felt like a quirky, offbeat dramedy.
Yeah, it's quirky, I guess. I don't know.
This would be a K-pop show, or they did a K-drama, but it's actually Japanese. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just I was not expecting this, so I had a different mind going into it. So, that being said, I actually did like it for what it was. I wasn't really upset what it is. There's some slow parts in here too. But if you're an older male like we are, this is aimed towards more teens.
Yes, I agree with you totally. This is not what I would call a serious action film, in that, when you watch the Don Lee one, you think you're dealing with adults, right, and men and all that. Even if you have the same setup here, despite the fact there's a fair amount of blood here, I would not necessarily call it gory. But it's kind of a joke in a way to me, the way they present it, the way they do it.
It's kind of like the Japanese mangas or animes. They always revolve around teenagers. There is sometimes there is gore. There's people like, especially here, the yakuza leader in here goes up to a guy basically who is selling him. He bought some on a stick or sort of like a toothpick over he bought some stuff, and the guy joked about, oh yeah, here's 2 million in back, and then he's like, what do you mean? give me my 2 million. And he basically starts harassing the guy, jabs the this is kind of gory, jabs the toothpick that that had the food on into the guy's eardrum.
Yeah.
And was harassing him. I'm just like, I had to look away because that stuff is nasty. I don't want to see that stuff because I'm like, I know how painful that must be. Oh,
well, it's very stylized in that, like, we talk about what draws you into the characters. I first thought this was just like a teenage boy, not a very big one. And Japanese people are not necessarily big, generally speaking. Doesn't mean they can't, have some size, but generally they're not as big as Americans and certainly not as fat. And so we have this opening scene here where the blonde is getting a job interview for somebody and then kind of gets sick of it. And then just, you have this really long extended scene in a small little bodega, as we would like to call them here in Central Florida. And it's I liked it. I thought it was a nice fight. The blonde it's not an easy fight, complains about being exhausted.
Yes.
You could argue whether or not some of the techniques with the closed-in knife fighting are accurate or over-sensationalized.
A lot of flips.
Stuff in there I didn't see. Like when you get it and you get a chance to stab somebody, you get stabbed 5, 6, 7 times. And then there's a bailout, which I thought was kind of interesting because it's like, this person is going to get whacked, but that introduces the second one, the extrovert, let's say, who shoots everybody and they start talking. You realize, they work together.
She's more the crazy one, though. That's the thing.
Exactly. She's like a young Lucy Liu.
Well, she's in a sense, she's not. She loves killing. She loves that, and what's kind of confusing about this is in the beginning, the blonde who is basically Mahiro is her in the movie. She is going to get a part-time job at this grocery store, and then she suddenly just kills the guy, pulls a gun out of her bag, silencer, shoots him in the head, then has this drawn on fight scene with all the different store clerks.
Yes.
And it was just like, and then you find out it's like it's all in her head. She was daydreaming about doing this because she didn't want to be there.
Right.
And I was just like, but still, that's cool though. I love that. So then later on, you look at the other girl. Her name is in this called Chisato. She's got his job at this diner. She goes in there. She doesn't want to be there, whatever. And after she learns how to do on this pancakes, to do like the whipped cream thing, whatever, she's serving it to the table. The one guy complains, "Well, I don't like whipped cream. You can have it." She hits him in the back of the head, slams his head on the desk, and then the lady who she worked with over, and she basically breaks her neck with one move, and then just kills the other lady, and then says, and you're like, okay, is this gonna be is this on her head too? But turns out no, it was real. She quit her job that way. She's like, oh.
Yeah, and so they throw you off by having basically a dream sequence at the beginning, although you don't know that it's a dream. No. I don't have a problem with that, but it made you wonder in this scene, it's just going to be another daydreaming thing. Okay, I get it. You're a young assassin, you're daydreaming, you're bored. Okay, how can you kill this one as an adult? As much as you might like to murder your boss in some weird, funky way, you really can't or whatever, right? And so I think for me, about 15, 20 minutes in, when this really hit me, is when they have a good 4 or 5 minutes scene of them basically going through a week. And what it is just almost like a static shot of them sitting on the couch and eating girl food that's Asian stuff, no protein, but ramen or whatever and stuff. And them kind of
cooker, and
then I started going, wait a minute, this feels like a different kind of film. And it was. And so once you accept that and you start watching, you're like, oh, okay. So again, this might be something where this kind of stuff is a little bit more commonplace if you're into.
It's not something I would have really gone forward to, but I actually kind of glad I did watch it because, it actually was decent. I've seen some other low budget ones I was looking at for maybe it's possible, but I was like, this was kind of quirky. Like I said, it's like a Disney show. Like I think that for those who remember back, actually it wasn't Disney. It was Nickelodeon. You had Sam and Cat, two opposites, Ariana Grande and this other girl, Jenna McCurdy, she's from iCarly. Basically, those two become roommates and they're opposites. But if you were to take that show, but turn it into this, where basically they're killing people. One's they're both crazy, but one's quiet, reserved. The other one's outgoing and murder happy. And and honestly, it worked because for this, I said I love the fact that they actually put the effort into the actual having the girl on the left, who's actually is a stunt woman, gets to do a lengthy fight scene.
Yes.
at least
Yeah.
two of them. And it makes it believable. She gets hit in the face, she knocked over, she's exhausted. She's like, basically the whole gist of the movie is that they're Felix and what's his name?
The Odd Couple.
The couple, but Felix and Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
And the blonde is Oscar, and the other one is kind of like Felix in a sense, basically where she's one's more reserved, the other one's more outgoing. So the one on the right's always getting her in the problems. So like they're supposed to whack somebody. She's like, oh, can you finish this for me? And they reveal that the reason she did it because, well, someone tagged traced her, the yakuza, and because of perfume she always wears, you know.
Yes.
And she followed her. It's like trap for her, knocked her out, took her gun. So then she calls the girl on the left over, hey, can you do this? And she's like, oh, I gotta go. It was a phone call. He's like, seriously, we're in the middle of a job. You're gonna leave this for me? So I kind of love that little humor they had going as far as that. And at the end, because this old yakuza mess, she's like, can you do me a solid and help me go kill the yakuza? I was just like, what am I watching?
Right. It's like they intentionally desensitize the violent stuff in there because there's a lot of what I would call blood, and yeah, there's some scenes, but
yeah,
it's sensationalized in such a way where I'm not feeling like I'm not feeling how difficult it is to kill somebody like it's a crisis thing. It's supposed to be the funny kind of kill that you don't take seriously.
There's no origin story explaining how they became part of this, which
No.
I don't need. I don't need it. It works perfectly fine the way it is. And as we said, there's a sequel to this, and I believe they're making a third one too as well.
Well, there's a scene about halfway through it, and so culturally, like we said, when we pop out films from different cultures, we try to relate it to other stuff or see if we can understand it. But like, I've never been to Japan. I know a few people that have. To me, there's a lot of interesting things about it. Japan, you could argue, is a very xenophobic country where they don't allow a lot of commingling. They're massively got a hyperinflation. They got a very aging demographic. The young ones aren't procreating at the rate that is sustainable, which some people argue about, whatever. But the thing about it is they're very. I've always said that, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, young men would go out and do anything to the mall and to find a woman or like that. Japan, it's not really quite the same. So you have some of these, and I'm not going to say alternative lifestyles, but different courtship things. Like, I don't know what it is about Japanese men that don't want to hit on women, because whether you think these women are ugly, cute, not hot, or whatever, there's a scene where halfway through they're in a restaurant, and they're dressed up. And there's that whole. It's not quite the furry kind of subculture.
No, it's the schoolgirl maids that a lot of guys are into. A lot of the anime nerds. So
I don't know where that comes from. I don't profess to know anime very well.
Been around since the 90s, bro.
It's been around since before that, back in the 70s and 80s. I know that as a kid.
But I'm saying, as far as that style of instead of doing open prostitution, this is basically just a maid cafe, which are really popular in Japan. They've been around since the 90s. That's when they popped up. And basically they call the men master and all stuff. There's nothing sexual about it as far as that. It's like,
well, that's exactly what it is. It's the role.
No, but I mean, like, they're not like prostitutes. They're not going and do this and they're gonna go have sex with them. There's nothing like that.
I understand that.
But I'm saying this is a very big trope that's been a lot of the anime stuff. Sometimes they have the girls dressed up as cat girls too, with maids and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So. Yeah, but I like this. Like I said, it actually meant it felt more like Japan because authentic. The main girl on the right, she gets a job there, and she's like, oh, I kind of like this. Is it actually? She makes friends. The other girl basically doesn't want to work by herself. She's very codependent. Says, can you give me a job there too? And then she kind of just hates being there. She's so embarrassed because she's basically wearing like either David Bowie or the Misfits or something like that. She's very alternative.
Yes.
Not goth, but 90s emo. And so
she takes the perfume and squirts it in the dude's eyes.
Yeah. So it was so weird because the Yakuza guy comes. He's teaching his son. He's like, we're gonna go in this. He said the days of prostitution is over. We're going to basically this is the future. This cafe gets simps. He's like, look at the price of the coffee. He's like, oh my gosh, how much they're charging? Like 3 times more because guys are simps. So they figure we're going to take over this restaurant, but they don't realize the girl on the right
is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it was like I said, it's a quirky comedy. They said very offbeat. It's not the norm. I'm curious because there's a sequel. If I ever review this, I'm curious what they'll do next because it's basically the whole story is the two girls are take away the assassins, they're learning how to coexist in this little apartment, they got now. And at the end, they kind of start to like each other, they appreciate it, they understand each other, have their own different emotions, and they start to respect. So, like I said, I'm curious to see where they would go for another story with this, because this movie is very much like a manga. I wouldn't be surprised if it's based off of a manga.
Well, one of the things I was interested in was honestly going to be the fighting, and there's a fight scene at the end, which we can talk about here for a few. I thought that the her opponent, the blonde, was not just a little bit bigger, not huge. I'm okay with that. One of the things I noticed is they we talk about like karate, like point karate was a real big thing back in the day, and like Chuck Norris is like the man, and there's a few other guys, but he was really, really good at that. Here, I mean, the way the cameras are, they know what they're doing.
Oh, the cake then.
Yeah, but the punching and the striking is just a bit. How do I say it? Like there's rhythm when Jackie Chan does it. Here, I don't know if there's wire work the way they're moving, because they're such small individuals. If you shove them, they would move back. But the way they're hitting, because they're so small, it's like when you watch flyweights, box or lightweights even, they can hit each other 1,000 times with a glove, and you go, man, these guys have beat the shit out of each other, and they're not going to get knocked out. Here, it's just really, really fast, but you don't feel the weight behind it.
It's not wire work. It's more like if you ever watch wrestling, they do hurricanranas, basically where they jump, they move their legs, jump on you, they flip. Yes. It's all choreography. Yes. And like I said, there's no wire work on this whatsoever at all. Which and I said it moves so smoothly. And I said, I meant you gotta remember, kids even still over in Japan and other countries are still brought up with martial arts stuff, training. At least most of them are still not. It's kind of a dying thing, but I mean, honestly, it looked very smooth. It didn't look forced. It didn't look like it's fake. It said like she gets thrown around by this guy, and to me, it's more believable because like the guys in here, the Yakuza guys, they look like soy boys. They look like whips. They're not overweight.
I was going to ask you because that was weird to me, or maybe that's just how it
purpose.
is. I can't imagine that. You think?
It's not, because you think about it. The average millennial, or even before the Gen Z, the pixels, they're not really that tough. They're kind of like, give me a gun, sure. And then, of course, in every movie, whenever there's like, they send a bunch of goons in, the goons get killed first by the bad guy or the tough, And we saw that with the Roundup, where they send in the guys with the hatchet and they get their asses whipped. And they get killed easily. So honestly, I did like this. They built it up because when the Yakuza, the daughter is who basically is the one who basically finds out who the other girl on the right is, and she's what killed one of their guys. And then she finds out, you killed my father and my brother, so come to my warehouse, And I love how the girl on the right, they're both fighting back and forth, and they're both crazy. So it was kind of like entertaining a little bit, threatening each other over the phone, yelling back and forth. I'm gonna kill you. No, I'm gonna kill you. It's like she's like, why don't you come here? He's like, no, you come here. And so eventually she tells the girl on the left, and she's like, you want to go help me kill a bunch of Yakuza? He's like, is it personal? She's like, yeah, it'll be a lot of guys, probably. He's like, you owe me. Pretty much. So I said they come in, they're riding on a bicycle. She puts this machine gun that was just strapped to the bottom of their coffee table in their backpack, and they ride into they walk in there, and the dude comes up, and like the one dude, he's like, says all the guys, like, why aren't you his gun? He's like, I got these right here, these hands. I don't need the guns. Immediately, that's the first guy taken out because he walks in the room, and a lot of guys don't expect the teenager. They're like, girls, you're lost. Go somewhere else. And then you realize, oh, you actually are the ones that are the hitman going around killing people. And instead of like, if they do the Indiana Jones thing, instead of fighting him, they just shoot him. Which I thought was kind of hilarious. But I said, getting into we get a nice hallway fight scene with a lot of flips, a lot of basically John Wick stuff. You see her doing the gun on the left. She's running, she's pushing the guys, shooting him in the guts, and then basically shooting around him using a shield. Probably the most unrealistic thing though I saw in this movie is at the end where the main bad girl is going against the girl on the right, and the girl on the right is about to get her ass kicked, but she grabs a machine gun that she had dropped mistakenly because these are not perfect assassins. No. They're kind of amateur. She finds a machine gun, shoots the girl, and as soon as the bad girl drops dead, you see the blonde girl's like, "Are you freaking kidding me? You almost killed me." Now in real life, the bullet would have went through the other girl and hit that girl. For how close she was. But,
I'm sure there's people in here and actors or actresses that we you and I really have no idea who the hell they are and all that may be significant and culturally there at the time. Maybe they're pop stars or not or what. Don't really know, don't really care. So that's one reason why when we do some of these, if we don't know it, like Jackie Chan or somebody famous, I'm not saying these ladies aren't famous, but it's those things where we're going, okay, we have to judge it for other things too. Now, when you watch it on Tubi, it's a great print. I believe it's subtitled. So you have the Japanese thing, which is definitely different than what we've been used to, right? Especially since we've done a ton of Jackie Chan or the dubbed Cynthia Rothrock type movies and some of the others.
Yeah.
So this wasn't, the sexy ladies, girls with guns thing that we've done a few of those films on. This is more of a, like you say, a teenage thing. Definitely not a rom-com. I would imagine if they want to do something different in the second one, maybe they introduce something like it. I don't know.
Well, they might. I'm not sure. I know there's at least the third one came out last year. So they've done 3 of these. The I was kind of interested because at the very end, like throughout the movie, you'll see this where they meet up with their handler at this restaurant, and they're always and then as they progress to the movie, like we learn more about that guy and a little bit about the organization. At the very end, she says, I can't do a job. He's like, well, just get your license. You drive. And she's like, I could probably do that. And then he says to her, he's like, you know what? You're not the first person I've had. It's kind of like quiet like that. She's like, what? Why didn't you tell me? So she's kind of like intrigued about that. So I wonder if the second one will maybe feature a guy who's like that, and maybe she'll develop a crush. We don't know. Like they said, this is basically like a quirky offbeat comedy aimed towards late teens, the early 20s. It's not your typical like we're used to, like the 70s action or even more serious adult movies. Like
one of the things you hear about Japan is how polite they are. Like if you go on a train, the trains are clean. If you're and they're quiet, people kind of stay to themselves. Sometimes, obviously here in the States, depending on where you're at or what kind of personality you have, you can strike up a conversation with a complete stranger. It just depends on what's going on. Sometimes in Europe, depending on traveling between the different cultures, since the area is so small when you're traveling, unlike the States, which is kind of big when you drive, it's not quite the same. So I thought it was interesting to get a taste of current modern Japanese culture, because Netflix obviously has been dominating with Korean stuff being a huge market and getting a lot of their things. We don't really get a ton of Japanese, or at least that we've reviewed, or I think it's very obvious. I think it's interesting when we talk about how a lot of the action films we go, okay, the Hong Kong stuff, which is really independent but really hasn't been since the 90s, is Chinese, right, with Jackie Chan and a few others. We've only done a little Japanese, not a lot. We've actually done, I think, a bit more Philippine or Malaysian actually with a few films here and there too. So
Korean, we've done a lot of Korean.
Yeah, so it's just depending on what your taste like, what the themes seem to be with it. I'm sure there's a lot of. One of this reasons why this made on the short list is it was very popular from my understanding. Like you said with the sequel, I'd heard the name of it and didn't get it, and I'm like, okay, 2 chicks, whatever. We want to kind of go back to the girls with guns, but this is the young stuff, not the Cynthia Rothrock. I still think it's the gold tier of the action movies when it comes to stuff. I'll say this: if you watch the film and you go, man, I expect it to be an action film because that's kind of how the trailer looks or how it's advertised. There's action in it, but it doesn't feel like an action film to me. There's, like I say, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I'm not necessarily feeling the weight behind it. That being said, like I say, the end scene is what it is. It's the biggest fight it's supposed to be, right? But I was really intrigued. I was more curious about that opening scene where they're fighting the really, really small 7-Eleven-ish type store or whatever, because I thought, they've shown me a few things in here I hadn't seen before. It was kind of a good creative use of the space with the narrow things too. And when you got a knife, there's certain techniques with it, right? You get rid of that, you go to something else. So I thought that was done smartly. Introduced a character through some action, get the other one involved through some action, then see them going on, then set up the plot. The plot doesn't have to be anything, to your point. I agree totally with you. So I was just trying to figure out with a dynamic, like, when you think of like Riggs and Murtaugh, right, from Lethal Weapon, were like that. Man, I'm getting too old for this shit. And how they didn't like each other at first, but then they whatever. Here, it's just a different kind of vibe, and maybe for a female audience, it's a little more apparent some of the nuances that are going on between them that you and I, as males, may have missed. So, I just would wonder what they are.
I was looking at the director Yugo Sakamoto did another movie, came out the same year. It's called A Janitor, and it also features this girls as well. 2 girls, main girls here too. He's also done one called Yellow Dragon's Village. He did like basically 3 different movies that released that year, and they're all on Tubi. So
yeah,
but same thing, basically undercover assassin. The janitor one is like undercover assassin, works as a janitor, and then one day he has to defend this girl from these 9 different assassins stuff, and after his identity is exposed and stuff. So honestly, I look forward to seeing more of the style because it's unique. I don't see this much at all. I mean, like I said, I say Disney, but I feel like loosely Disney because like I said, if Disney allowed something like this, I think more people would probably get the Disney Plus stuff.
Now, there's some violence in here. What did you make of that compared to the level of it with some of the other stuff we've seen?
So the violence in here, there are people who get shot. It's not very gory. Probably the most gory thing in here you probably see in here at all is the guy getting the toothpick in his ear, and you said that. But other than that, the violence is pretty much like the 1970s when someone gets shot. You don't see the blood sometimes. Remember, they just fall over.
Yes.
And here though, but with the fight scene, when she gets punched in the face, though, it does leaves a bruise. Even both girls, when she gets knocked out, by earlier, she has a bruise on her cheek.
Mm-hmm.
So I did like that as far as the blood. It wasn't too gory. It was actually pretty decent. Like I said, you can watch this probably with your 17 or 16-year-old kid, and they'll be fine. It won't be traumatized.
Yeah, and I think the thing with violence with some people is I think done right in terms of the story to make a point. I'm all in favor for it. I know you don't like a lot of the hack and slash and gory stuff, so there's different approaches to violence and its effectiveness in storytelling.
Sure. If you want
here it doesn't have to be serious because if it is, it would distract from the fact that these are teenage girls in an atypical situation and trying to get along. It has to be quirky, otherwise I don't know if it would work.
Like I said, it's a quirky, cutesy Disney version of The Odd Couple, but they're assassins and they murder people for a living.
Now let me make a comparison here for a moment. Let me backpedal because one movie we have not done here is The Professional.
With Leon?
Yeah, like Leon, The Professional, where you have a young girl that gets involved and gets into it or whatever. I've always been a fan of the 90s show Nikita, then they redid it again, and then there's been some other ones like Hannah on Amazon and a few others too, kind of the female young
Annabelle or something.
Yeah, and they get away from the psychological part to it and make it more of the, and I have to say this honestly, they make it more of the Jason Bourne Invincible, profile type person, which here I didn't get that vibe, thankfully.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we haven't talked about any of those types of things here, so it's interesting because when you said there's no origin story for these two, you're 100% right. If you've got something with that here, I don't know if it would help right now.
It don't need it. I mean, obviously, unless you're planning on doing a 2 or 2 to 3 hour movie, I don't need that stuff in there, and it's pointless. And that's the problem with a lot of some movies that they have to give you an origin story in the beginning, tell you stuff. Sometimes it's better if you just jump into like this, and it's done wonderfully. It's just I realize it's just a simple plot, and that sometimes it's all you need. Yeah. But I was gonna say is that we usually here on the channel here we love like I believe it's Man. What's the guy's last name? The guy he did the Thief. So did Miami Vice.
Michael Mann.
Michael Mann.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a nice camera scene in here. It says so basically the girl on the left decides she's gonna like after the whole after the Yakuza guy gets wiped out by her on the right, at the little maid place, and she shoots and kills the guy. She comes home, and then the girl on the left, she's like, I want to apologize for being a bitch, pretty much. I got us both cake, we can get it. And I love it, and then she spills the beans, like, well, we gotta go kill Yakuza, okay. So then she takes the cake, and I love it how she takes her, holds it, and the camera's on the plate. So when you put it into the fridge, like, and you see them, and then they're like, okay, look at the cake later. Well, we'll eat the cake later after we come back, And then she closes the fridge door, and then it goes to the next scene. I love that. I want more transition scenes like that. And at the end, they go in, they open the door up in the fridge, and then you see them, and there's a cake right there. Same angle, same camera view. I love that.
It's interesting you brought up transitions because I've been catching up today with a show. I was debating about just doing a quick review over. I've always told you that I'm not a fan of celebrating the bad guy. The bad guy's supposed to be bad. You're supposed to not like him, whatever.
They were all bad here.
Yeah, and last week when I did The Ninth Gate with Johnny Depp, I pointed the fact that he's not a good guy. He's a bad guy. He's a sleaze bag.
Who do you root for in a movie?
Right, but then relative to what happens later on, you go, okay, now I get it. He's the easiest out of all of them, so he's the least sleaziest, right?
Yeah.
I've been catching up on Dexter's
the new one,
the origin story, Original Sin, I think it's called. And at first I thought, man, this is going to be kind of a weak knockoff. I know nobody liked the way Dexter ended. I get all that. And I had a problem with Dexter in that I don't want to celebrate a serial killer that's a sick individual, but there were times in the show where you go, yeah, he kind of is, and whatever, it ran its course. But what I'm liking about this is they have Christian Slater in it. They've got Sarah Michelle Gellar. They've got a lot of really good actors and actresses, and they have the actors that look like the people that we would see the adult Dexter deal with, because this is him like coming out of college, basically getting an internship, becoming a member of the Miami Metro, learning how to use the code because Christian Slater is his father. But the best thing about it is the transition scenes, because just as equals what's going on in the real time, which would be the early 90s, they flash back to an earlier time when his father was growing up with Dexter's mom. And you see the backstory that fills in some of those gaps about how Dexter, honestly, and I'm trying to be a little spoiler free, how he became the son of his father, right? Because you always say, well, if a father has a son, does he take him out and kill him because he knows he's a bad seed? The idea was that he gave him a way to kind of live, which is cool. And Christian Slater does such a great job with it, but he's got a woman that's working for him as a plant for the bad guys he's tracking, and things get complicated. They do such a great job of all these side stories. I go, the main story doesn't have to be important if you've got good actors, you've got good stuff in there. Patrick Dempsey's the main guy at the time whose son gets kidnapped eventually. Dexter's learning how to kill. He's learning how to blend in with the romance angle. Deborah's in there, but the transition scenes, they make it so easy for you to go, oh, wait a minute, this is going back to the 70s or whatever it is, right? So I just thought they're shooting it very smart in a way that's easy to follow. Here we're mentioning left, right, blonde, black haired, introvert, extrovert, but you get who we're talking about, right? So even if you watch this and you can't understand what's going on or whatever, and you're watching it with or without subtitles, it's so basic, there's nothing to it. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and I said, they do kind of do it. It's a black comedy. That's basically it's a dark comedy. It has the dark humor in it though, but it's not like sadistic where she like, there was one, they said the one scene where she decided she had to go to work, so she leaves the one on the left to go clean up the work and kill the guy. But before that though, she gets a phone call. She was the blonde came over and was like, oh, what is this, a nail splitter? It's like, I'm looking, where'd you get that? She's like, Amazon. Like torture devices they bought on Amazon.
I know, and they're making fun of it. Where'd you get it from? Amazon. Or looking at them like, oh, I get it. Well,
that's, and she's like, she comments like, oh, that's expensive. It's like, yeah, I got on Amazon. But that's the thing, those two girls are beyond rich. They're just working at part-time jobs to basically keep up and be basically, have a clean way to basically do taxes and all that stuff. That way, they don't have to worry about because they said like the handler's like, no, we don't give a shit about the cops in here. It's the IRS, pretty much the taxpayer coming after them, tax dollar. It's like they don't want to fuck with that at all. So I did like that. The girl on the right though, basically, because she's very. I get a feeling that she's doesn't know. She's one of those characters, base types that does not know how to fit in. Like she acts kind of like cutesy, happy stuff, smiley, but she's never doesn't have common sense, right? Yeah, which I thought was really cool because I haven't really seen a character like that who doesn't really have common sense as a main lead like that. So when she actually she's like, when they're having a lunch break at the cafe, and she's like, oh, and the girl's like, oh, that's expensive, and because the girl she's telling how expensive it is, how many yen it is and stuff. She's like, well, it's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, it's like, yeah, that's $200. That's $1,000 for those cakes right there. And it's like, it's like you spent all that much. And she's like, then she reveals this is her part-time job. She's actually paying off her tuition for college. Mm-hmm. And then the girl's, so then the girl on the right, she's like, oh, so you're just a poor girl. Okay, poor girl.
Yeah, we need more bitchiness between them and stuff, and then we need like the bonding, like while they're out shopping or whatever. It
wasn't meant to be like that though.
I know, right? But the girly stuff you and I aren't used to seeing or watching because we're guys, right?
No. So like I said, it was interesting because like the other girl kind of like, she's like being cute. It's fun. It's like she wasn't immediately insulted. Had this been American drama, they would have been totally different types. It would have been very, very different. And I'm thankful for that Japan and especially Korea, they're more laid back. they don't have. I mean, as far as when it comes to some of their movies, you know, they're not self-entitled. They're not like, you know, like I said, like is Hollywood is, you know, oh, we get it this way, a certain way. They're allowed. I said that's what I love about Japan and Korea. They're allowed to basically not worry about social as far as like, you know, things you can and cannot do in a movie. I mean to a certain point they are, because it's immoral, but they're allowed more freedom versus having to do the DEI hires. This guy got to check all the checkboxes for the wokeness and stuff. And there's none of that crap. It's like what we used to be.
Well, we did mention kind of in closing here that one of the things that's been devoid, except for maybe Sydney Sweeney, is we don't get any nudity in movies anymore.
No.
And basically, most people think that automatically translates to women with boobs and then butts, or really the side boobs, been the only thing been worth showing. I've always said male ass is fine. I don't mind that or anything. It just depends on what you like. But the point is if you got somebody good looking and you want to show them off, there's nothing wrong with that. They got a great body in the 80s. Everything Matthew McConaughey was not new to this. You got an excuse to take your shirt off. Let's do it, right? These girls don't have to try to be cute. They don't have to be sexy. There's no need for it, right? So don't need to do it, right? Don't be forced. But to your point, we've got the ability to do it, but nobody really will do it, you know? I mean, I think probably the sexiest assassin type thing I've seen is maybe a good 10 years ago. Mission Impossible, was it 4 or 5 or whatever, where she's wearing the yellow dress and she's getting ready to do the hit. It's the chick that plays in Silo. The Australian, you know who I'm talking about. I think she was in Dune as well. I can't remember her name.
Rebecca something.
Yeah. And I thought that was, no, it was done very elegantly. It was done very artfully. I really liked that. It was neat, very feminine. Like here, you don't have to have that. So I'm just wondering if in the second film they're gonna go against type from what they've established here and like put them in an awkward scenario. Like, what do you do if like if you're Ace Ventura, right, and you're chasing down bad guys in Miami? What do? You take Ace Ventura, you put him at a social at the Vizcaya Mansion or where the hell it is down there in Miami there, where he's sneaking around with the Mission Impossible thing, right? They're going to have to put them in different situations, you know, like more of an upscale restaurant rather than the ones they go to, you know, fish out of water kind of thing. There's a lot they could do with the pairing of these two, because I tell you, at the end of the day, that's what makes this movie watchable, is they do seem like a couple that has a certain kind of chemistry between them, and that's what works. Bottom line, if you go on there thinking it's an action movie, it's, even though there's action, it doesn't feel like at the beginning, a little in the middle, some at the end. There's some gun stuff. Martial arts films, I don't want that, but we get it. But that's not what this movie is about. So if you can get over your expectation going in and watch it for what it is, that's fine. If you complain about how it's presented, it turns out not to be that way, I can understand that too. I don't know how the original trailers compared to what the film is and all that, because we know they're nothing alike in American movies at all.
No, and I don't watch trailers in general, even with this American stuff. I don't watch trailers because sometimes they spoil the whole movie, or sometimes what's in their trailer isn't even in the movie. It's totally different cut.
Yep.
So with this, like I said, this is a quirky kind of like slice of life. Girls basically living roommates don't really get along. Like I said, one's an introvert, one's an extrovert. Yeah. And there's a lot of ramen eating. So basically, if you're going to watch this, and just like anything, and for those who watch anime, like, or any Korean shows, you know, like, you're going to get hungry watching this because they're eating a lot of good looking food in here too.
The food over there is not the same over here.
You even saw, well, no, the thing is, you even saw spaghetti at the end in the restaurant. The one girl's eating spaghetti. I was like, whoa, this came out of nowhere. Because like, I expect ramen and everything else. So
if you're into food in movies, if you go back and listen to our Columbo season 1 and 2 reviews, I mark out a lot of times there's food on screen because they do a good job of integrating and showing it. There's something about food on the screen that just looks good to me. I don't know why, it just does. Like you mentioned Michael Mann earlier with Miami Vice. He knew how to use water basically to get lighting and stuff like that, make you feel like you're there. And that's something. Food is one of those magical things too. It just, that and sports is what made HGTV popular, not porn. I mean, let's be honest.
The other great thing about watching this is that if you've never been in Japan and you're not really accustomed to like, or basically know about their customs, how they do things when they buy cakes, they actually have like a little wrapper on them too. They peel off too, and they put it aside. Just simple little things like that. You know, the different flavored things. You're talking about the little pastry cakes they had at the restaurant where they were at when you bought stuff. So, oh, the fruit flavored one. I want to try this because they're expensive. Like I said, like Japan has a lot of different cool little things over there. So when you go, if you ever go to Japan, just you may not like some stuff, but don't worry. There's like 1,000 different things that you can try, sweets and stuff like that. They're really into that. Broadening your horizons, and I think we'll do. I'm looking forward to watching the second one. So I'm not sure when we'll review it, but definitely check this movie out. Not much more we can say about it. We've kind of like spoiled for most of it, but honestly, I think you'll like it because I was.
I don't think. It is what it is. It's a little more juvenile than I thought, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's like I said. If you like quirky, dark comedy, odd couples, basically clashing over each other and having forced to be assassins, and just at the end taking out the yakuza, a little bit of camp in there too. This is right up for you.
Yeah,
I said if you're not into that, no disrespect, check out other movies, the Roundup, and then the Outlaws with John Lee, or even Train to Busan if you kind of like zombie movies. Desert Rose says she's not really into slashers. I kind of feel that way too. The closest I got to anything like that was Evil Dead, because it was a dark comedy. There's some gore in there too, but it's not like the Saw or like eyeballs being pulled on, something like that. Yeah, it's not torture porn. And I honestly think Desert Rose, this would be up your alley. And anybody else who likes stuff.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not bad. No. Now, I mentioned before at the beginning of the stream that this was voted on by everybody, so I want to thank everybody who voted. It's one of those things where we're trying to get a bit more engagement. I appreciate all of the commentary going on in the chat there. We'll have another poll coming up by late Tuesday night Eastern time, which is where we base our times off of too. Yeah. We still have some scheduling issues as far as finishing up Forever Night. We're getting close to that. We're still having the weekly drops on it. After that, just so you guys know, Professor Pixel, the young 20-something, and I have been forcing him at gunpoint to watch all the James Bond movies in orders, and we're long overdue, so we'll probably fit one of those in. At that point, he and I usually transition over into another television show for a season one, because the idea is to, depending on how popular they are, either continue it or come back to it. So I know we have superfan Kevin Dobson loving Forever Night. I'm glad that more people are listening to that, because it is a fun show. It takes a little bit for you to, I guess, to understand it, because it's Canadian. It feels a little different, and we like it. But it's been enjoyable, and I hear seasons 2 and 3 are radically different. Some people say even darker, which gets me intrigued. So we've got that. We have a lot of things back there. If you got any suggestions, commentaries, we do keep them on the short list. You and I have talked about doing Miami Vice. We may get to that here this year.
There's a lot of Korean movies I'd probably want to review with you. I don't know if we ever reviewed Alive. The kid he's basically trapped in a apartment building during a zombie outbreak apartment, and he meets this girl who's basically on the other side of the complex, on their side, and they basically form a bond, and have to just try and fight to survive. So it was on Netflix about a couple years ago. Check it out. I said that's probably gonna be on one of the polls eventually.
It actually sounds familiar, believe it or not.
I don't know if you reviewed it or not, but you said I love kind of stuff like that. You got the kid basically becomes creative, how basically to survive and everything. I said I love stuff like that.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts? Anything else you need to plug?
Nope. Just check out this movie. Go over and watch it on YouTube, or not on YouTube, but on Tubi, and check out some other movies like we did The Outlaws. I believe that still might be on Tubi, and the sequel to that with Don Lee, also with this what called the Roundup, another fun movie. Check out those movies, watch them on Tubi, and then come back here and watch our reviews if you haven't done so. We have everything curated to you, and specifically in different genre playlists and stuff. So.
Right, and Tuesday night we're going to come up with something. We'll post what that's going to be here shortly. So that live stream will be at 8:00 Eastern. So look for that link there too. Yeah. I appreciate the those of you that are retweeting and letting other people know. I think one or two of you did that with Forever Night and something else, and it just brought in a whole new group of listeners and all that too, which is cool.
Yeah.
Again, our approach has just been talking about what we like and don't like. So thank you for that.
Yeah, like I said, like Des Rose, you're gonna go watch it. MK, if you watch it too. If you come back, if you guys go watch those movies, come back and watch a review if you haven't watched the older ones. Just leave a comment down below what you thought of the movie. We always encourage people to leave comments. It helps with the algorithm, helps get this channel shared out. Yeah, thank you all for being here. It's been nice to see actually more than 2 people in the chat. We had a steady like 7 or 8 people here. And we just did this channel. Even though we're almost 2,000, we're getting close to 2,000 subscribers. We need the watch time. If you guys can just go back and just watch the playlists. And you can actually get the fun part. You get to watch us as we grow as a channel and get better at stuff, or maybe we get worse. So
well, the thing is you can use us understanding what we like to help you form your opinion on whether or not you think you like something. So it can suck, but we like it. Vice versa, you're here us to argue it, but we don't fight or really yell or get mad at each other. That's not kind of what we do.
And one final thing, if you guys haven't done so, you guys can leave comments also as far as what movies you want to see, because you may not see a movie it's on the poll, but maybe for a future poll, leave a comment down there with recommendations. We love that. So, all right, guys.
Good night now.
Right. All right, hold on. As always, stay extreme. Later, guys.